All right, good morning. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. You're watching Morning Live. We're about to get into the conversation this morning, and that is on tuberculosis awareness campaign. It's such an important and crucial week as we're gearing up for March 24th, which is an annual date where the world celebrates the Tuberculosis Day. So that's World TB Day, every March 24th of every year. And there's a special focus on this year's theme, which is yes, we can beat TB. And so that is something that we'd love to get into the conversation about, to just understand what is tuberculosis, how does it come about, is it a bacteria, is it a virus, some of the preventive mechanisms as well as curative mechanisms that are crucial to ensuring that this disease is, combated in a good way, because the WHO describes it as an epidemic, and a silent one for that matter, that has seen thousands of lives that are lost yearly due to that. So I'd love to introduce my guest in studio this morning that will help us tackle this. I'm joined by Dr. Beatrice Ndiritu, who's a clinical officer, a specialist in lung and skin diseases, and she works at the Mama Lucy Kibaki Hospital. Thank you for your company this morning.
Thank you.
All right, so before we get into the conversation, Daktari, allow me to just show the viewers some of the statistics that have been, given out by the World Health Organization concerning this particular disease. So if we could get started to just take a look at the annual death rate as well as the number of infections that are recorded annually. So according to the WHO organization, that is the World Health Organization, 10.6 million people globally had TB in 2022. 10.6 million people globally had TB in 2022. 1.3 million people have died of TB. 1.3 million people have died of TB in 2022. That means the number could be higher in 2023 and subsequently this year of 2024. What else do we have? If we could take a look at the other statistics as well. Now, 2 in 5 Kenyans are spreading TB unaware. 2 in 5 Kenyans are spreading TB unaware. That means 2 people do not know they have tuberculosis, they're living with it, and subsequently they are spreading it to other people around them. And then finally as well, from the WHO, if we come back now locally, that is now 22,000 children fall sick from TB every year. And Kenya has a high prevalence of TB, recording 150,000 to 160,000 cases annually. And among the undiagnosed cases, 25,000 to 35,000 individuals have open tuberculosis. So annually, 150,000 to 160,000 cases of TB in Kenya. That should tell you something about just how high the statistics are and how high the numbers are worrying. So let's get this conversation started. You can give us your feedback across our social media platforms on EBN TV as well as on YouTube. So Dr. Beatrice, thank you for your company once again. Such an important and crucial week as we gear up for the Tuberculosis Day of 2024 that is celebrated annually. How important is this day when we're speaking about tuberculosis?
Thank you for having me here. This day is very important as we are making people get aware of TB, and they'll get to know that TB is an infectious disease where they need to take care of themselves, to take care of those who are sick, to prevent more spread of the TB. So it is help us also to know that TB is curable. So when you get TB, it's not a death sentence.
It's not a death sentence. Yes. Right. Now, let us just try to understand what tuberculosis is, because I know, in a high school setting, or at least in our basic education setting, little is talked about TB. You just, you're given what your curriculum needs you to know about TB, but there's just more to it. So perhaps we can start with, what is tuberculosis? How does it come about? And the key question actually, is it a virus? Is it a bacteria? Perhaps you can help us understand that.
Okay. So tuberculosis is usually a bacterial infection. It is usually infectious because it is contagious. You can spread to somebody else. And the other thing is, it is an infection that is chronic. The other thing is that it affects more the lungs. That is why it is easily spread. It can affect any other parts of the body, but most of the time it affects the lungs. Yeah. So it is usually spread through the droplets. When somebody coughs, when somebody sneezes, when they talk, when they laugh, you get that you can spread TB through the droplets that you release. So when you release the droplets, somebody else can pick them from the air and then get the infection. Yes.
So is there any scientifically proven of one individual how it comes about? Because if it is spread through droplets, I get it through droplets. What about that patient 0? How did they get the disease?
So it has to be an infection from somebody who is infected. You have to get the bacteria from somebody who is infected. And when you get the bacteria in your body, if your immunity is low, the bacteria will keep multiplying. If your immunity is good, the bacteria will remain in the body and can stay there for quite a long time. And then later on, when your immunity gets low, then they start multiplying. And when they multiply, that is when you get the TB disease, and then you can be able to spread it to somebody else.
Right.
So it is usually from the bacteria. When you get the bacteria, then the bacteria multiply, then you're able to spread to somebody else.
Yeah. Yes. How fast does it multiply to somebody else?
It depends with the immunity, because there are some people whom you will see that when they get the bacteria right today, within weeks, they will have developed the infection. There are others who will stay with the bacteria even for decades. So it will depend with the immunity of an individual. So that is how it goes. So it doesn't matter when you receive the bacteria, it depends with your immunity.
Right.
Yes.
Now, if you look at the stats, 150,000 people in Kenya annually, have tuberculosis, whether aware or unawares, and then 22,000 of that, are working with it unawares. So it really points down to a lot of medical tests, at least checkups, for lack of a better word, for you to walk into a hospital and just go for a checkup and, and go and tell the doctor, you need to check me up for tuberculosis. As you work at one of the biggest hospitals across the Republic of Kenya, how often do people walk to that door and say, I want to come here and get tested on whether I have TB or not?
Sometimes you'll get people come say they want to have the test done because there are some symptoms which somebody present with, and they have always been, even sometimes they are on the TV, and we try to tell people that when you have these symptoms, and the symptoms are like somebody has been coughing for maybe quite a while, somebody has lost weight, somebody has been sweating a lot at night, somebody has been having loss of appetite. There are those who have been, maybe they have been into contact with somebody who has TB. So most of the time you'll see the people coming and tell you, I think I have TB because I can feel all these symptoms. Others will tell you, I may not be having all these symptoms, but maybe I'm just coughing. But last year, I stayed with somebody who has TB. So I would like you to test me for TB because I think I could be having TB. So sometimes people will come because there is some awareness which has been created even in the social medias, even in the television. And so most of the people are getting aware of the tuberculosis. So they have the knowledge of the symptoms. So you'll find sometimes people will come and tell you, I need to be tested. But still, you will find others, they are not aware. They will still come, they tell you, I feel this and this and this. And when you test them or when you listen to the history, you find that this could be TB. Right. So you have to get to test them and see whether they have the TB.
Right.
Yes.
Now, let's stick with the symptoms. I know you've just quickly gone through them, but, this points to perhaps more, effect on the lungs of a person because there's coughing and other symptoms that we'll be able to put up. Perhaps you can just take us through that again for somebody that didn't quite catch it clearly the first time that you did.
Okay. So for somebody who has a TB which is affecting the lungs, most of the time they will come with a cough. Sometimes you'll have a cough which has blood stains. It is not always, but there are some people who will come with a blood-stained sputum. There are those who will come also with chest pains, because maybe if it affects the lungs, there are those who will have the pain in their chest. There are those who will come with the loss of weight, which you have not planned. There are those who go for gym, I want to reduce my weight. But now this person has not gone to the gym. They are not intending to lose their weight, but they have lost their weight. They come and tell you, I've lost 2 kgs, I've lost 5 kgs. So there are those who will come, they have lost even their appetite. They really sweat at night. They wake up and the blankets are wet, or the sheets are wet, the clothes are wet. So those are some of the symptoms. So they will have such symptoms. The others will come and telling you, I have been to contact with somebody who has TB. Yes.
Are there stages to tuberculosis, perhaps stage 1, 2, or whatever stage that puts a difference of how fast somebody can heal from it, as well as how fast somebody can die due to tuberculosis?
We cannot say we really have stages, but what we have is maybe we can call it the severity, because there is somebody who will have the immunity which is very low, so the bacteria will multiply very fast, because the bacteria, they thrive very well in a low immunity, they multiply very fast. So those people who have low immunity, they are not able to fight it very fast. So you find that if they are not taken care very fast, TB can kill very fast.
Right.
So it will depend with the immunity of somebody. So how severe it is, it will depend also with the immunity of the person. Yes. So when they have very good immunity, you might have, they don't have too much bacteria, or maybe it depends also with the time the patient came to the hospital. There are those who will feel sick and they start going to the chemist, get the antibiotics, get the painkillers, and they say there are those who will get sick and they go direct to the hospital with the symptoms. We get to do the test, and we get what the patient is having, the TB, and we start the treatment immediately. So this patient will recover very fast, and compared to this person who took a bit long, because they have more bacteria. Yes.
You've also spoken about the painkillers, and a lot of people may feel a bit unwell and go to over-the-counter drugs. Does over-the-counter drugs or the OTC drugs, completely cure tuberculosis, or do you have to actually go to a hospital?
Most of the time people will go to the chemist and they get the antibiotics, the painkillers. They will just lower the symptoms a little bit. But within a short while, the symptoms come back again. So the TB will never be cured by the antibiotics. It will never be cured by the painkillers. So we will have to use the right treatment for the TB. Yes.
Let's now talk about the treatment. How does the treatment plan for tuberculosis look like, or what is done to the patient once they have gone through the testing and the doctors have confirmed that this person has TB? What does the treatment plan look like? Where does it start from?
So when we test a patient and we find that they have the TB, what we usually do is that we usually start treatment immediately. We usually start the drugs, the TB drugs, immediately, so that we can start fighting the bacteria. So the treatment usually goes for 6 months. That is for the patients who have the TB of the lungs and other TBs, except, we say that TB affects all other parts of the body, except the hair and the nails, just because those parts are not alive. So any other part can get TB. But most of the time you get it in the lung. So the only parts of the TB which you can get TB and we treat for a longer time than 6 months is only when you get TB in the meningitis, or you get TB in the bones. So those ones we treat for 1 year. But these others we usually treat for 6 months. So what we usually do, we usually use 4 drugs. There are usually 4 drugs which is usually in a combination. They're usually in a combination just to reduce the pill burden, because if we say we give 1, there will be a lot of drugs. So we usually do, it is usually a combination of 4 drugs which a patient will take for the first 2 months. So for the next 4 months we drop 2 and you remain with 2. So we usually treat for the 6 months. So the first 2 months we call it intensive phase, where we treat for the first 2 months with 4 drugs, and the rest of the duration we treat with 2 drugs for 4 months. So for the ones we treat for 1 year, the same case. For the first 2 months we use 4 drugs. For the next 10 months we use the 2 drugs. Then there are other management where we can check if the patient has low immunity, maybe because of other infection. We also treat other infection. There are people who come with the diabetes because they have diabetes, their immunity is low, so we have to treat those other comorbidities like those, diabetes, hypertension. There are those who have HIV, we also make sure we manage. There are those who have malnutrition, we give them, if they need the supplements, we give the supplements. Those who are taking alcohol, we have to tell them to stop the alcohol. Those who are taking other drugs, smoking, we have to stop because they interrupt with the treatment. So if you don't stop, you may not get proper treatment and you might get resistance. So we also, together with the drugs, we also make sure that we tell the patient to take care of those other issues.
Right.
Yes.
Earlier you mentioned something very interesting, that tuberculosis can affect any part of your body apart from, you said the nails?
The nails and the hair.
And the hair.
Yes.
Can you explain that, how does that work?
What happens is because the nail part is dead, and the hair also. So those parts cannot get the TB. So TB is that's why we say it is a chronic one, because it affects all parts of any part of the body. It can affect any part of the body. So it is something which is not very good. Yeah.
Right now, when somebody has got the underlying issues,
yes.
You've mentioned malnutrition, perhaps HIV,
yes.
alcohol, smoking, diabetes, or at least, they've got one of these. How fast can the, death rates happen for this kind of person? Because, it is one thing to have somebody who's perhaps just getting it but has got no underlying issues, but you've got the other person that has got the underlying issues. How much of a factor are they to the mortality rate of TB?
Yeah, we can say that these people who have malnutrition and other comorbidities, sometimes you'll find that the mortality rate is usually higher to them than any other person who have good immunity. So that is why we usually take very good care of those patients. If they have for example, we have seen diabetic patients, sometimes the sugars are refusing to stabilize just because they have this infection. So sometimes you have to hospitalize this patient so that we can manage the sugars, so that we can prolong the life of this patient. We can be able to try and stabilize them and help them to come up faster, to prevent the mortality.
Right.
Yes.
There are two ways that, you can deal with that disease, either a preventive way or the curative way.
Yes.
And we've seen that the government is really so much focused on the new SHIF, which will be sort of a preventive approach to curing diseases.
Yes.
So the preventive way for TB is what? Because what we've been talking about is how to cure it, somebody that has been infected already. So the preventive approach of it, what should a person do, or at least what should they be engaging in?
So for the preventive measures, for us to prevent from getting the TB is that we can, when you're able to avoid an overcrowded place, it is usually very important, because the more crowded the people are, the more the chances, the higher the chances of getting the TB from a person who has TB, because it is through, as we said, it's through the droplets, as they talk, as they speak, as they laugh, as they sneeze, as they cough. So the more crowded we become, the more chances of getting the TB. Other things is like when you can, if it is somewhere you cannot avoid, we can try to use the preventive measures like using of mask. Also giving education to people that when they are coughing, the hygiene. When you're coughing, people are supposed to use their elbow. When you're coughing, you do like this. You don't just cough without covering your mouth to prevent the spread of the droplets to other people. We also advise people, maybe those who have TB, it is always good to have to stay in a well-ventilated place, so that when you cough out the droplets, they are spread out. They don't just remain, or they are not contained in one place. Because, for example, if we stay in an enclosed room or in a matatu and the windows are closed and there is somebody who is coughing, and the bacteria will remain enclosed inside there. But when we open the windows, at least they will get through the windows. So good ventilation also is another thing. That's why we are telling people, even in the matatus, make sure you open the windows. So if you are living also with a patient with TB, let them also most of the time be outdoors. When they are outdoors, if they cough up the bacteria, when the bacteria are exposed to the UV rays, they tend they are killed by the UV rays. So that is also another measure. The other measure of prevention is that when we get somebody has TB, we usually do something called contact tracing. We trace the people who are staying with the person who has TB. So, and especially if they had a sputum test which was positive. So we have to trace all those people who are staying with that person, because it is very easy for them to get TB. So we get them, we test them whether they have already received the bacteria, If they have not, we give them something called prophylaxis. Those are drugs. They are drugs we give them to just try to kill the bacteria in case they had inhaled the bacteria, to kill the bacteria. There is also another thing, the BCG, which is given to the small children.
Yeah.
Even that one is also a preventive measure for the young children.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, how this disease is behaving, just from what you've explained, sounds like COVID-19. You know, there's the contact tracing, just a mere cough, and somebody has that. So is it sort of like under the same category as the nature of COVID-19?
Yeah, it's somehow, because you know it is through the droplets, and you can spread to the person you are staying with. So we have also to contact trace so that we can reduce the spread.
Yeah.
And also try to treat as early as we can. Yes.
Now, some of the statistics as well that have been released indicates 22,000 children are affected or infected with tuberculosis. Does this statistics point to something interesting about an age factor when you're talking about TB? Is there any age that you'd say is more susceptible to getting TB, and there's an age where, you know, they're very fine? How would you describe that statistics?
Yes, we can say that in the young children and in the elderly, they are also a common, they are more susceptible. Why? Because they have low immunity. But what's something interesting about the children is that the children will get the TB from the adults and adolescents, and it is very rare for a child to spread the TB to an adult or another child.
Oh, really?
Why? Because they have something we call bacilli. They don't have a lot of bacteria. Their bacteria does not spread as fast as an adult. So you'll find that they will rarely spread it to somebody else. But most of the time when a child has TB, they have gotten it from an adult. Yeah. So the children and the elderly, they have low immunity, so they are more susceptible to get the TB than the others.
What age limit for the children? From what age limit are we talking about?
Most of the time we talk about below 5 years and below.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
That's interesting. Yes. For the children, is their treatment sort of different? Because, you've explained they cannot infect an adult or any other children, yes, but they can get it from an adult. So is their treatment different, or the treatment is just the same? So we can say the treatment is just the same. It's exactly the same. Yeah. Although now we have a new regimen which has just updated this year. It is still coming up, so I will not want to confuse people. But the treatment is still the same. We have been treating for the 6 months. The first 2 months you give the 4 drugs, and the next 4 we give the 2. So we still kill the same. The only thing is the formulation and the dosages, because we usually give according to the weight. Yeah. Yes. All right. Now, with the theme of this year that says yes, we can beat TB. And tuberculosis has been described as an epidemic. Would you see the same from where you sit, that it is something that has been there for a while? It is not talked about enough compared to other diseases like cancer or like HIV or even the COVID-19 that was. Is it getting the enough attention and focus that it should get? We can say that we need more attention, because the disease is still spreading. So I think we need more attention, even to the community, even to the schools, because we have even seen school children. I have seen several children come from school and they are spreading to each other. So I think that we need more awareness, especially even in schools. Even in school we have the crowding, especially in boarding schools. You find in the dormitory they are sharing the rooms or the cubicles, and that's how you find that maybe you find like even 2 or 3 they have the TB from the same school. Yeah. Right. Interestingly also, you work at the Mama Lucy Kibaki Hospital, yes, and you also have a TB desk, yes, that is set up there. So, somebody's asking, what does a TB desk do? What exactly do you do at the desk? Okay, what we usually do there, when the patients come, the patients will either come from home direct to the chest clinic, or they come from the outpatient department, or from the nutrition, or from any other department. Other department, they may be referred to us. So
for us is just to, if the patient has already been diagnosed, because we usually do the chest x-ray, they can help us also diagnose the TB. We can also do the sputum test, they also help us diagnose. So if the patient comes with the results, we'll start the management immediately. Yeah. But if the patient comes with the symptoms, we are going to do the investigation, we'll take the history, we'll do the investigations. If we find that this patient has TB, we will start the management immediately. Yes.
How long can a patient stay in hospital while being treated for TB?
In the ward or in the outpatient?
In the ward.
In the ward. So it will depend with the patient. It will depend with the response. Especially the way we were saying that if somebody has comorbidities, like they have DM, diabetes, they have hypertension, they have HIV, and they have come when they are very sick. So that person may take longer than a person who just came with, they just have a pneumonia and the TB. So that you might find that this person may recover very fast and they have good immunity than this person who has low immunity or who has comorbidities. So it will depend with the person. So sometimes you'll find that it is the comorbidities which has made the patient to stay for longer in the ward than the TB. Yes.
Right. Now, what are some of the biggest challenges that really affect how effective a TB treatment can be? What are some of the biggest challenges we have?
The challenges is when the patient, for us, the government has provided the treatment. Although there's a time we had a challenge, there was a time we had missed some drugs. But I think that one has been solved. So those are some challenges which come in between. The other challenges are when you start the patient on treatment, and these patients, maybe they will not comply. So you keep following up the patient. You know, sometimes they will take the drugs for a short while, and then they start feeling, I think I'm feeling better. Do I have to take these drugs for 6 months? And then they feel, no, I think I don't have. So we have to keep following up. Sometimes you will try to follow them up, because we usually take their contacts, because we usually make sure we follow them up every now and then. So sometimes they will give you a contact. When you try to look for them, the number is not going through. So those are some of the challenges to follow up. And no, we have to follow up because we are trying to prevent patients from spreading to others. So we are trying to prevent the patients from spreading the disease from others. So that sometimes becomes a challenge to us.
Now, one of the biggest false, stories that I've ever heard about tuberculosis that, really makes you raise eyebrows is that, even just contact, mere, touching and greeting, you have TB, or that if someone has HIV, automatically they have tuberculosis. So perhaps you can address the myths that are around, tuberculosis or misconceptions that people talk about when we are having a conversation on TB.
Yes, I have had this with several people, and sometimes we usually come and try to reassure them. Very many people think, like a long time ago, that people used to believe that when you have HIV, when you have TB, you must have HIV, which is very wrong. It is not true. Everybody who has TB doesn't have HIV. It is not everybody who has TB. Actually, there are very many people who has TB and they don't have HIV. So that was one of the myths that people used to have, but it is not true. Then the other thing is that when you have TB has cure. It can be treated. Yes, you can when you take your drugs completely, check them properly, you can be treated. It can be cured. Yes.
All right. So thank you very much, Dr. Beatrice Ndiritu, who's a clinical officer and a specialist in lung and skin diseases from the Mama Lucy Kibaki Hospital. Thank you for coming in to shed more light about the tuberculosis awareness campaign. By the way, what should people be doing as we gear up for this day, March 24th, World TB Day? What should they be doing?
What they should be doing is that you can try and check your friends. Are they coughing? Do they have the symptoms? We can have those. There are usually very few symptoms. Either they are coughing, they have lost weight, they are sweating a lot at night, they have lost appetite. If you check on your friends, if they have such symptoms, tell them to be checked.
All right.
Yes.
So thank you very much, Dr. for coming in to shed more light on this. And as what you're seeing on your screen basically gives a picture or paints a picture of how much of an epidemic this is. 22,000 children fall sick from TB every year. Kenya also has a high prevalence of tuberculosis, recording 150,000 to 160,000 cases annually. Also, we've got the diagnosed, undiagnosed cases of about 25,000 to 35,000 individuals who have open TB. Basically, they're walking around with tuberculosis without them knowing. We're also looking at the world statistics that reveal about 1.3 million people annually die due to tuberculosis, and that is something that needs a lot of attention and a lot of conversation around. So that is where we want to wrap the broadcast this morning on the tuberculosis awareness campaign. As Dr. has said, you need to check on your friends. If you notice these symptoms, or if you see the symptoms that she's mentioned somewhere around, then they need to get checked so that we can deal with this issue for good. My name is Cynthia Nanjala. Do enjoy the rest of your morning.